Hey everybody, welcome back to the program. Now, it's interesting, when I released my review of the White Album by the Beatles, a lot of people kept asking me what would be my single LP version, and it kind of surprised me. I never had heard of this, but I did a little bit of research, and apparently it's kind of a common thing amongst Beatles fans. Some people feel like this album is bloated. I personally love it just how it is, but I wanted to dive more into it. Now, supposedly, it stems from a comment that George Martin made where he stated that the White Album would have been better as a single record release. And there's also a quote from Ringo in the book Beatles Anthology where he says we should have put it out as two separate albums, the White and Whiter albums. Regardless, the seed was planted and now it seems like a rite of passage for any serious Beatles fan. So with all that, I wanted to tackle this myself, but man, was it difficult. I really love this album just as it is, and it's hard to break it apart, but I did it. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. One way is to simply make a 14-track album in line with Sgt. Pepper's or Revolver, but technically you can fit up to 16 songs with roughly 24 minutes per side, which is right in line with the optimum side length without sacrificing too much fidelity. Now some folks like to include Hey Jude and Revolution in their mix, but I chose not to, seeing how those were released well ahead of time of the album's actual release. So I wanted to tackle this as an actual what if. Like, what if they released those two singles, saw how well they did, and decided, you know what? Let's cut this down into a single record. And that's how I approached it. Because some people even include some of the demos that they recorded at George Harrison's house. But again, I didn't go there. I went with what was actually released on this record and essentially just sawed my album in half. So with that, let's get into what I picked. I didn't change tracks 1 and 2. I really tried moving them around, and even at one point I had Helter Skelter open side 1 and Back in the USSR open side 2, but it just didn't flow right. Back in the USSR, right into Dear Prudence is such a great 1-2 combo that why mess with perfection? I'm back in the USSR. You don't know how lucky you are, boy. Back in the USSR. Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? In the number 3 spot, I moved Glass Onion to side 2 and replaced it with Rocky Raccoon, which is a childhood favorite, and I like how well it flows from Dear Prudence. Rocky Raccoon checked into his room only to find Gideon's Bible. Following suit, I removed Obla Di Obla Da because it's just a little too McCartney sweet for my taste. Don't get me wrong, it's incredibly catchy and fun to sing along with, but when you gotta cut half of these songs out, this was an easy choice. I also removed Wild Honey Pie because, let's be honest, it's really more of an idea than an actual song. I also removed Bungalow Bill, which was hard because it was another childhood favorite, but in my mind, I could only keep one story-driven song, and so I chose Rocky Raccoon instead. In place of all of these, I have Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except Me and My Monkey. The opening guitar riff is a great transition from the mellow Rocky Raccoon, and the remaining song moves at a great clip to keep the middle of side 1 flowing. I then moved Happiness is a Warm Gun, I'm So Tired, Blackbird, and I Will to side 2, and I removed Martha My Dear because it just didn't jive with the rest of the songs that I have on side 1. It really feels more like a McCartney solo record type of a song. I also let go of Piggies because as much as I enjoy its absurdness, it just didn't fit with my slimmed down version. Why Don't We Do It in the Road was an easy one to remove because there's really not much to it. But Don't Pass Me By was a really hard one to let go because there's not a lot of Ringo on here, and I really enjoy his contributions to Beatles records, but I couldn't just keep it for that, and ultimately it just didn't feel like it flowed well with any of the other songs that I had on side 1, so I had to let it go. In place of all these, I have Mother Nature's Son as track 5. It's a nice, calming follow-up to Me and My Monkey, which is actually kind of funny because Mother Nature's Son actually precedes Me and My Monkey on side 3 on the original album. Up next, we have Happiness is a Warm Gun. Its soft opening feels so right playing after Mother Nature's Son, and I love the contrast between the two songs. Also, Happiness plays an important role as bringing some great energy before we close side one with the exquisite Julia. I love this song, and I have to say it again, I firmly believe this is John's best song on the album. It brings side one to a nice resolve, but still makes you want to flip the record over.
So I sing the song of love, Julia.
You know, I really considered opening side 2 with Birthday, but in the end I decided to remove it completely because stylistically it's just a little too similar to Back in the USSR. Now on the double album it makes perfect sense to have it open side 3 as it's sort of a callback to the beginning of the record and enough songs have passed in between. However, on my single album version this wasn't the case, so instead I have the outrageous Helter Skelter, which makes for an in-your-face opening of side 2. I then mimicked the 1-2 combo of side 1 by following up with the magnificent My Guitar Gently Weeps. I don't think this needs much justification as it's one of my favorite songs of all time. But at one point I thought about having it on side 1, but I felt moving it to side 2 balanced out the album better.
While my guitar gently weeps.
Now up next, I had to let go of Lennon's Your Blues and Sexy Sadie because as much as I enjoy them, I don't love them as much as the other songs that I did pick. However, in their place, I have his wonderful lullaby for insomniacs, I'm So Tired.
I'm so tired, my mind is on the blink.
Blackbird hits the number 4 spot, and it should be no surprise as it's one of my favorite songs by Paul.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly.
Now this was not on purpose, but looking at my list, I totally cut out 4 songs in a row, starting with side 3's closer, Long, Long, Long. I really wanted to keep it, but the more I listened to my playlist, the more I felt it needed to go. I already had so many great slow songs that it was really hard to find a great place for it. I also said goodbye to Revolution 1, mostly because it didn't really feel very Beatles to me. Honey Pie also got the axe, mostly because as much as I like it, it's just a little too sweet and pretty for the vibe of my album. Harrison's Savoy Truffle was another tough one to let go of because I really enjoy the playfulness of the song, but I needed to make room for the tracks I enjoy more. In place of these, I have Glass Onion, which I think makes for a great pick-me-up after the relaxing Blackbird. I actually got rid of this song early on and had Birthday in its slot, but the more I listened to it that way, the more I felt I needed a song with some less repetitive lyrics. In the end, I love how the coda with the strings blends right into my next pick, Cry Baby Cry. And man, do I love this song. It was actually one of my first choices, but more importantly, it lends just enough tempo to bridge the gap between Glass Onion and the last song on my list. I still have 2 more songs to cut, and big surprise, the first one is Revolution 9. Now, I don't think I need to explain why, but suffice it to say, it's just a little too long and not enough music going on. My last cut is the final song on the record, Good Night, which was another tough call because now I don't have any Ringo on my White Album, but honestly, I couldn't keep it just for him. It's just a little over the top with the orchestration, and I think it works best coming right after Revolution 9. Without it, Good Night sounds way too out of place on my version. In the end, I chose to close my album with the lovely I Will. For me, this strikes the perfect balance of McCartney's sweet style without going overboard. It gives just the right amount of musical resolution to my album.
When at last I find you, your song will fill the air.
Well, everybody, that has been my single record White Album playlist. Even though it was tough to take apart one of my favorite Beatles albums of all time, in the end I had a lot of fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Now, if you're interested in hearing my version of it in its entirety, I put a link to my Spotify playlist in the description. Be sure to let me know what you think of it, and go ahead and post your own single LP White Album track list in the comments below. Until then, thank you so much for watching. I'm your Vinyl Geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Hey everybody, thanks again for checking out this video. Now if you liked what you saw, I put out new videos every Tuesday and sometimes Friday. You can click on my Beatles playlist or pick a video that YouTube will choose for me.